All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that honestly reads more like a spy novel than a government document. We're unpacking a declassified report about one of the most staggering intelligence failures in recent U.S. history. We're going to talk about how China, for more than 2 decades, systematically walked away with America's most sensitive nuclear secrets. So let's just jump right in with the absolute bombshell finding from this whole investigation. The report concluded that the secrets stolen by the People's Republic of China, the PRC, didn't just give them a little boost. No, we're talking about a quantum leap. This wasn't just catching up. This was potentially putting their nuclear arsenal on the same level as the US. I mean, think about that. Decades of American technological dominance just gone. Okay, so the big question, the one you're probably asking right now is how? How on earth did this happen? And look, this wasn't some one-off thing, a single mole or some lucky computer hack. This was a slow, patient, and incredibly strategic campaign that unfolded for years, pretty much in plain sight. And the Cox Report, well, it lays out all the clues. So let's follow that trail together.
First up, let's talk about the shocking revelation itself. We really need to understand what the committee uncovered.
So it turns out this wasn't some recent thing. The report showed that China's push to get this tech goes all the way back to the 1970s. For 20 years, they were methodically targeting U.S. national labs. But here's the kicker. The U.S. didn't even realize how bad the breach was until 1995. That's a huge head start. All right, Section 2. This is where it gets really interesting. How did they do it? How did they pull this off for so long? Well, it wasn't with some James Bond-style master spy. It was something way more subtle, a patient and frankly brilliant strategy that the report calls the mosaic method. Okay, so here's the genius of this mosaic approach, and also what makes it so incredibly dangerous. The best way to think about it is like building a massive, complicated jigsaw puzzle. China used this huge network of people. We're talking students, visiting scientists, business people, to collect thousands and thousands of tiny individual puzzle pieces. Now, each piece by itself, it looked harmless. A lot of it was unclassified information. But back in China, their intelligence analysts were taking all those little pieces and putting them together, and suddenly, you've got a complete, top-secret picture of American nuclear tech. And a massive part of this mosaic strategy hinged on something called OSINT, which stands for Open Source Intelligence. This is basically intelligence from public information. China was systematically going through public U.S. technical journals, academic papers, conference notes, you name it. They basically weaponized America's own openness against itself, finding all those crucial puzzle pieces hidden in plain sight. Okay, moving on to part 3. America's security blind spots. Because, look, a clever strategy is one thing, but it only works if there are holes to exploit. And boy, were there holes. So what exactly were these massive blind spots? Here's the heart of the problem, really. It was a complete mismatch. On one side, you had China with this centralized, strategic, government-wide plan. And on the other side, the U.S. response. Their counterintelligence, the guys whose job it is to stop foreign spying, was just totally fractured. It was uncoordinated. You had different agencies, the private sector. Nobody was really talking to each other. And that left these massive gaps that China's agents could just waltz right through. And get this quote from an expert who testified before the committee is just, wow, it's so revealing. He's basically saying that American tech companies, the very people who invented this technology, had no idea what was going on. They were completely in the dark. They're making deals with Chinese firms, totally unaware that these companies have deep ties to state intelligence. They were just wide open targets. And this wasn't just a few companies being naive. This lack of awareness was institutional. The report found, and this is almost unbelievable, that no single U.S. government agency, not the FBI, not the CIA, nobody, was specifically tasked with tracking these critical business deals or technology transfers. It created this enormous, gaping blind spot that China's intelligence services just walked right through. All right, Section 4, and this is where we get to a really fascinating and kind of deeply ironic twist in the story. The very report that was supposed to fix the problem might have actually made it worse. I mean, just think about it for a second. The whole investigation was public. The final report, it was declassified and put out there for the entire world to read. Now, great for transparency, right? But it also meant the people you're investigating, yeah, they're reading it too. There's that old saying from Machiavelli, No enterprise is more likely to succeed than one concealed from the enemy. Well, by making this whole investigation so public, the US basically did the exact opposite. They tipped their hand, they gave China a massive heads up, giving them plenty of time to cover their tracks and protect their agents long before the report was even done.
But it actually gets worse than that. The Cox Report is super detailed. It lays out US counterintelligence methods, it points out all the vulnerabilities, and it even recommends fixes. So, without meaning to, it basically handed the PRC a blueprint, a roadmap for future espionage, showing them exactly what not to do next time and how to get around the new security measures.
So that brings us to our final section, the open society's dilemma. Because when you boil it all down, this whole story points to a really fundamental challenge for a country like the United States. And this is really the core of the issue, right? The very things that are considered America's greatest strengths, a free press, open academic collaboration, a transparent government, they're also its biggest vulnerabilities when you're talking about this kind of espionage. And this all leaves us with the really tough, profound question that the report forces us to ask. How can an open society protect its most vital secrets without giving up the very openness that makes it what it is? It's a massive dilemma, and it's one that policymakers are still wrestling with today, especially now, in the age of cyber warfare.
At the end of the day, the report's final assessment was just damning. It called U.S. counterintelligence bureaucratically fractured, passive, and too often simply ineffective. The Cox Report was a brutal wake-up call. It exposed a system that was completely unprepared for this new type of threat. And it leaves us with this really unsettling question that we're still dealing with. In the fight to protect secrets, does an open society always start at a disadvantage?